an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Veronica Mars, Season 3, Episode 15, Papa's Cabin. In this episode, we find out who murdered Dean Odell. And it's not a surprise, because I kind of had it figured out, but I didn't know why, and it was still really fun to watch it all unfold. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Arielle for commissioning this episode. Arielle is here in the chat with us. So, yeah, this episode was, first of all, I gotta say, guys, I'm really surprised that we know who killed Dean Odell already. I really thought the rest of this season was going to be devoted to that mystery. Plus, of course, you all know that I had assumed that the coach's death was like tied in somehow. So I thought there was going to be a major conspiracy that was like an ongoing thing until the end of the season. Evidently, not at all. Not even a little bit. I was super duper off base. I can't decide how I feel about that. Part of me is like, you know, I was saying to you guys that I wasn't really that invested in who did it because I didn't care that much about any of the people involved. It was like, it was vaguely interesting, but I wasn't really attached and worried. There wasn't that kind of tension for me. So in that sense, I'm kind of like glad that we're moving past this mystery onto perhaps another one, or maybe it won't be like that. I don't know. I really have no idea what comes next now. On the other hand, that does make me feel like there was maybe some potential for more than we got, you know? And it's just a really tough thing too, these mysteries where, because we knew so many people at Veronica's school when she was at Neptune High still, and therefore there were all of these, like, this variety of characters that we had gotten to know fairly well, there were enough of them that you could have there be somebody like Beaver, for example, who winds up being guilty in the second season, who we feel like we have grown like attached to an idea of who he is. And so it's affecting when we find out he's the one. It didn't work for me. As you guys know, I didn't really like that twist. And I don't feel like they earned that at all. It was sort of weird and problematic as well. But at least there was like an emotional component that I felt and was genuinely surprised by. Because this college campus has only brought over some people from her school, and we know all those people really well, we can be pretty confident they're not involved in any of the things that are going to be going on. So that automatically creates this sort of distancing effect where we know people have plot armor, you know, and they're not going to be the one. I'm not concerned Mac is going to turn out to be a killer. I'm not thinking Wallace is going to have shot his own coach, you know, things like that. And so because of that, I'm really not sure what I want to see from another mystery this season. And I'm assuming, because we only have, like 8 episodes left this season, I'm assuming that means there's only really room for one large, like, ongoing mystery. I don't know that they'll even do that. I'm not really sure. Do you guys, do you know if they knew they were being canceled by the time they wrote this season? Or did they think they were getting a 4th season? Because that also influences the way they decide to, like, go about things. So I could see, too, that being a major motivator, because I know the movie was, like, crowdfunded. And if they ended things on, like, a bit of a cliffhanger at the season finale and then they didn't get renewed, that would certainly be a hell of a motivator for people to want closure, you know? Rachel's here. She says, I think they thought they were getting a 4th season, or at least that they had a shot at it. Okay. Yeah, so maybe this means that we'll get another large arc and it doesn't actually get finished within the show. I don't know. But yeah, I was really surprised that this episode ended with the discovery of who killed Dean O'Dell, because I just assumed that was going to take the whole rest of the season. And because we had been closing in so much on who killed him, I also assumed that there would be a larger conspiracy that finding out who killed him would lead to. And instead it feels like a pretty self-contained story. So I'm going to need y'all's help on this. The whole thing that we find out is that Tim, Landry's TA, is the one who killed Dean O'Dell, and he framed Landry, right? But he already had the recording so the motivation that he is supposed to have for killing Landry is that Landry, he gave him a bad reference. He applied to some Pepperdine, I don't know. And this guy told the man who called him and asked about, how is this kid? He said, basically, not great, you can do better. It's a pretty, brutal scene to, hear that, because it's just so casually dismissive of him and the work that he has put in, So that's supposed to be his motivation, is that he, frames Landry for murder due to a bad recommendation. Is that enough to any of you guys? Because that, for me, seems like it's out of proportion. And maybe it will turn out that this story isn't quite as finished as I thought it was. But, from where I'm sitting, that feels like not really enough motivation, because I don't understand why he wouldn't have just gone after Landry then. Why kill the dean? What was his beef with the dean? Was the dean just purely complete collateral damage? Because he says something at one point when he's talking to Veronica, well, everybody hated the dean. And she's sort of taken aback by that and is like, well, not everybody. And I don't feel like I saw enough interaction between him and the dean to understand why he feels this way or thought that. So I really enjoy the mechanics behind how Tim accomplished the setup, basically, the framing. But I don't feel like his motivation makes a lot of sense. It's just kind of weak, and it feels like you... let's see. Arielle says, I always assumed that was just the last straw and that he'd always kind of put him down in similar ways. Rachel says, maybe it seemed like convicted of murder is a worse fate than death. Maybe. Melanie says, I'd want to ruin his image/reputation, but murder? Rachel says, I think the dean just seemed convenient. Yeah, see, this is my problem, is that we're having to conjecture about this. It's not, they don't explain it well. It just, and it doesn't feel like they're going to suddenly be like, oh, surprise, he didn't actually commit the murder, because by the end of this, it seems pretty clear. Yeah, he definitely did it. And I might be wrong about that, but it's a weird sort of, it feels half-baked a little bit. Honestly, step back and look at what's going on here. Tim feels a way, and so, okay, first, before I start on that, I started to make a point that I kind of lost track of. So he hears this bad recommendation, and then he decides that he's going to commit this murder. But the thing is, he had already been bugging Landry before Like, I had thought that the bugging was going to be, like, linked to the murder itself. But it sounds like Tim just bugged his boss for no reason. Is that right? I guess that's just meant to be that he's like a snoop. We needed more, I think, of their relationship if I was going to understand this, because then the timing of that is weird then. He's just been like taping and listening to all these conversations, I guess, and then eventually just stumbled upon a thing that made him want to commit murder. And he already had all of these recordings from even before that. Weird. I really would like some more about him. But, okay, so getting back to the other point that I was going to make. If you think about Tim, and you think about his feelings about Landry, let's say y'all are right, and Landry had been putting him down a lot, and he just got kind of sick of it. Okay. You find out that this dude who has just completely fucked you over with this bad review is fucking the dean's wife. Wouldn't you want to team up with the dean instead of kill him? Like, here goes a guy who has a lot of power and could really... I mean, the whole thing that was meant to happen is that the dean said that he was going to ruin Landry's, like, career. And that is everything to him. To me, that's goal accomplished right there. You don't even need him to be in jail. You just need him to be completely destroyed as a fucking professional. Somebody who is blackballed everywhere and can't get a job anymore and starts to maybe like look to you for help once you graduate. That's ideal. If I were in Tim's position, I would be feeling really petty, and that would be the thing that I would want to do, is like just level him and make it so that now he needs your help, maybe, if you are able to get into like a professional position later on. I just don't really understand the murder. Just doesn't really make sense in the context of what his gripe was alleged to be. It feels like it was overbaked. And if he was listening in on these phone calls, he'd know that that was what the dean had threatened to do, because he heard this call that Veronica winds up listening to with him later, where, you know, they're both talking about being destroyed potentially by this guy. So yeah, I don't know. I really, really enjoy, like I said, the mechanics of how he got it all set up. If I wasn't as suspicious of him as I was to begin with, the fact that it keeps being the one that discovers like the really necessary evidence, I don't know if that would have raised red flags for me or not. I went into this, as you all know, feeling like I don't like this guy. He's shady. I wasn't sure if he'd committed the murder, but I was like, he's certainly bad news. But the whole, like, I want the, like, emotional angle of it to make more sense, because especially what winds up happening is that Landry kills the dean's wife by accident, and he's going to jail for manslaughter in the end anyway. That's a grim fucking situation. That's really dark for this show. Like, I mean, this is somebody who was otherwise totally innocent, and he got like roped into this situation. And granted, like, he made the choice to push her the way that he did, but they would neither of them have been where they were at all if it weren't for this whole setup. So I think that's part of it for me, is like Landry winds up getting destroyed anyway. And it all just feels like it was over a bad job recommendation. Really? Like, that's it? I wanted there to be more to it. I thought, and I think I said this in an episode, I thought it was going to be that Tim found out that Landry was sleeping with his girlfriend. Because remember, there was that whole thing where, first of all, I had suspected that Landry fucked around with students. The dean says, when we get to hear his like yelling at them in that scene where he comes into the hotel room, he says something about like no more bedding impressionable students. And I thought it was going to turn out to be like he knocked up Tim's girlfriend or something. And for me, that would be much better in terms of like emotional drive. Here goes a guy who gave you a bad recommendation and has been very dismissive of you, and he went and fucked your girl. Like, insult to injury, you know? And that just feels like something that fucking Landry would do because he seems slimy to me. I don't have any evidence beyond that. He just seems slimy out of the gate. And I had said more than once that I was worried he was coming on to Veronica. It doesn't look like he ever actually, they weren't going to do anything with that. But he definitely seemed like the kind of teacher that you find out he's been fucking students left and right. And you're just like, oh yeah, of course he was. Let's see. Rachel says, I wonder if Tim suspected he was being undermined by Landry, like maybe he had gotten other suspicious job rejections. Even if that's true, I don't know. Arielle says, wow, that's a really good point. I can't believe I never thought of that. Maybe the writers wanted Landry to come off being mostly redeemable and good since he's saying such positive things to Veronica about her potential and didn't want to undermine that. But then why have the dean say it? Is the dean just assuming that Landry's fucking other students? Because he says it with a certainty that makes me think he fucking knows Landry's been fucking students and just sort of turned a blind eye to it. I don't know that that's true, but the way that he said it made me feel like that was not a guess. That was not slander. That was a fucking fact that he was certain of. I don't know. Because, yeah, like I said, I really feel like if we want Tim to have a really, like, a bigger motivation, a TA having trouble, like, getting a job, it's just not really there, that tension that I want. But, you know, I haven't actually like talked about this episode. I've just been sort of like going on about my feelings on it, mostly because I watched this one live. It was like a voyeur episode. So a lot of it I actually paused and commented on as I was watching it, but not everybody came to that. So the episode starts off in Landry's class and Veronica is deciding where she's going to sit because she feels really weird about the fact that her dad is like after this dude and she doesn't know if she should keep sitting in the front row or whether she should move to the back and show some loyalty to her dad or what. And Landry comes up to her and straight up addresses it and is like, dude, look, I know this is really awkward, but I am still very dedicated to like helping you learn. You're an excellent student. I don't want this to come between us in terms of like this, you know, mentor relationship that we've got going on. And it won't affect my judgment of your performance or anything. And I liked this because, you know, she really clearly was struggling with what to do. And he's just coming out and addressing it in a way that's very mature. And we know that she can handle that. It's just a moment that I appreciated. Rachel says, I agree we are sort of stretching to find a reason, which isn't great. Yeah, you know, it's just, like I said before too, about like, I'm not mad that the mystery's already over. If this is really just what it looks like, and it absolutely was just the reason that Tim killed him was because of that, then probably it's best for it to be over now rather than waiting to the finale episode of the season, because that's not like enough of a punch for a finale episode. So maybe it's for the best. So then we go to Keith questioning, oh my God, what is her name? You guys, I always forget. Fuck. I keep wanting to say Charlotte. Mindy, thank you, Rachel. I don't know where I'm getting Charlotte from. Okay. She mentions her ex-husband's fingerprints on the keyboard. where did those come from? How did the ex-husband's fingerprints get on the keyboard? There goes one that I forgot about. Rachel says Landry. Landry tried to set up her ex? Oh, he switched the keyboards. Oh, I missed that. Because he thought Mindy did it. Oh, so he was trying to cover for her. Right. Okay, I vaguely remember this now. I rewatched the first half of this episode and I didn't have time to finish the whole episode. And I was like, it's okay though. I was paying close attention and I remember. Apparently I didn't remember everything. So this scene, first of all, I love the filming of it because, you know, she has like almost a Veronica Lake look to her with the hair that almost comes down over one eye and the lips and the lipstick and the dramatic, like the whole look of her is the femme fatale thing. And we've got the really intense lighting as well that feels kind of like Usual Suspects. We've got the overhead light bearing down on her that's putting pressure on her. Then we've got the light streaming in from outside that's like the red and green. I don't know where those lights are supposed to be coming from in the office exactly, like what that is, but it looks really cool in the interrogation room, so that works for me. And basically Keith is pushing her about how many pieces of this story that she's been telling him don't actually add up. And he is, you know, she says something about the keyboard and how that whole thing seems like a smoking gun. And Keith's like, yeah, so here's the thing. Why would he use gloves in every like area of this murder and then strip the gloves off and just type with his bare hands? This doesn't make any sense. It's like far from a smoking gun. It confuses things all the more, actually. Plus, we have like on record that you picked up a refill for a prescription that he was supposedly out of, but that was in his system. And you're trying to tell us that you didn't see him. But that doesn't add up either. And he basically sits down next to her and is like, I don't think you did it. I think Hank Landry did it. But either you're going to let him set you up, which might be or might not be what's happening, or at the very least, you're going to kind of go down with him because you're going to keep lying for him and we're going to figure out that you've been lying. And I really like appreciated the whole way that Keith approaches this. So this is when she finally tells him the truth about how the dean came to the hotel and how he just was like completely going off, that he had a gun. And we get to see him and the like way that he tells Landry, I'm going to completely ruin you. You'll never be able to get a fucking job again. And as he's like saying this, it cuts away. But later on, we get to see the rest of it. And he also tells Mindy, you aren't getting anything. I should have listened to my friends about marrying you in the first place, but I'm at least glad that I listened to them about the prenup. You're getting nothing. And honestly, I kind of loved that line. I just love the idea that he had a bunch of friends who were like, dude, what are you doing? And he went and married her anyway. And now like his petty side is coming out and he's just like, I should have fucking listened to him. And I want you to know they all hate your guts. Like I really enjoyed this and it's a shame that he winds up dead. No tenure, no more happy days in academia, betting impressionable students and easily charmed wives. So that's supposed to be what Mindy is worried motivated Landry to kill Cyrus. I said that I would go and talk him down. I went to the house, but his car wasn't there, so I went by his office. And the phone call was Hank wanted to know how it went. His office had just been egged, and he wasn't in a good mood. So when I tried to talk to him, it didn't go well. I tried to ask him, please be merciful. And she gave him the Xanax and thought that it would do him some good. 3 pills practically left him helpless. I just gave him the bottle. He handled the dosage. I was there for 5 minutes. He yelled. I left. End of story. And I believed her. But then we have a scene with her later where she's buying a boat. And I really enjoyed this, you guys, a lot. So what the episode's attempting to do, and it didn't quite work, but it very nearly worked. I already was so convinced it was Tim. It wasn't going to be easy to get me off that like train. But I definitely, her deciding to buy a boat and take off certainly got me going, shit, was I wrong? Did she do it? It would have been kind of tight if she had done it. And it turned out that she had just confused things just enough to fucking sail off into the sunset. Do you know what would have been fucking hilarious? If she like sailed off with Tim. Tim's waiting on the boat for her. She's been having an affair with Tim this whole time. The whole thing with Landry was like a red herring. It was just a way to get with Tim. Oh my God, that'd be so funny. I'm sorry. Oh, what a bad pairing. I keep thinking about it. So yeah, her purchasing of that boat and the whole way that went, I actually really enjoyed the tension of that. And when he winds up like catching up with her, I thought that was really well done, because there's enough tension between the two of them that you really start to be like, did one of them do it? Oh my God. Maybe I was wrong about this, because Landry feels like desperate enough that you kind of think maybe he did do it. Doesn't really make sense, but like, I don't know. So then we have Landry actually getting arrested in the next scene when he's in front of his class. Embarrassing. And him getting questioned by Keith. He agrees that he will like submit to questioning without a lawyer, which I have to say, I feel like it doesn't really ring true for somebody in his line of work. Correct me if I'm wrong. But if you are studying criminology, you must be aware how much cops can twist things, right? Like, I feel like that would be something that a person like him would explicitly do the opposite most of the time and be very prepared to protect themselves because they are aware how it can go. Because if you study criminology, I would think that you would get some examples of wrongful convictions and what led to that happening. So if you know that you're innocent, you know, like, that's just one of those things that I know that it's always treated like if you lawyer up, that's you tacitly either admitting you're guilty or that you have something to hide. But, you know, okay, let people think that. I would rather them think I have something to hide than get convicted of murder. So this is when he starts to think, because of everything that Keith tells him, which he apparently didn't know already. I thought he knew this. Keith tells him about the bloody clothes that were discovered. I really thought for some reason that he was aware of that. And I don't know why I thought that, because like, it's not like the police just share every piece of evidence that they managed to collect with the public. Why would he know? But that is the moment, combined with Mindy only telling Keith about how Cyrus threatened to ruin Landry, but not mentioning her and the prenup. He's like, oh my God, Mindy is setting me up. That, for me, is such a heartbreaking moment, because each of them has wanted to believe the other wasn't guilty and has been sort of like putting themselves in harm's way a little bit in order to protect the other. And then in these two scenes, we see each of them break and think, oh my God, maybe I was wrong. And she thinks that he did it, and he thinks that she did it. And that, for me, is like a really devastating thing. This is sort of like, I don't know how many of y'all in here also watched Broadchurch, but the whole thing with Broadchurch is that it's much less about the whodunit of a mystery and much more about the ripple effects that a murder has on a community and the ways in which people struggle to like keep secrets that wind up getting dug up despite everything because of the investigation, the effect that it'll have on relationships with other people who are, you know, either victims or not, suspicion that grows between people who thought they knew one another and they find out that they really either didn't know each other at all, or they falsely think, oh my God, I don't know you, because they got bad information. Just the things that can happen. And this for me felt like a tiny bit of that, you know, just the lasting effect that suspicion can have and this feeling of betrayal that both he experiences and Mindy experiences. And it's incorrect, is both of them are innocent. But this fucking guy, Tim, manufactured things so well that he like not only got this guy under suspicion of murder, but he broke the trust between two people who seemed to have genuine feelings for each other. He managed to like snap that. And that's really like ugly. That particularly sucks to watch. Really, Tim wanted to ruin Landry's life and he fucking succeeded. He didn't get him convicted of the Dean's murder, but he still got him like in a position that he can't get out of. Now Landry has to live with knowing that he caused her death. And he thought when he did it that she was guilty. And then to find out, oh, she wasn't even guilty. Like, I was trying to comfort myself with the fact that she was trying to set me up. And then it turns out that wasn't even true. How do you sleep at night after something like that? Like, if they both get convicted and put away and they wind up in the same prison, that'll be a problem. I wonder how that works. Like, would a judge can they send people to prisons like outside of their jurisdiction? Like, how does that go? Because I would think they would recognize what a risk it would be to put those two dudes together. But sometimes the law just doesn't really give a fuck. And they're like, I don't know, figure it out. And at other times, the law can be surprisingly like, oh yeah, we're going to put them in separate places. And they'll really like attend to it. It just seems arbitrary to me when we care about things and when we don't. So I'm wondering if they wound up in jail together. I feel like there's going to be another murder because Landry will kill Tim. Holy shit. Are you kidding me? This kid framed you for murder and got you to kill the woman that you loved. Maybe loved. I don't know. Yikes. I could see that being worth killing for. You're already in jail. May as well. Oh, you know what though? If I were Landry, you know what I would do? I'd write a book. A criminology professor who gets set up by his own student and is in jail gets to like actually experience the justice system from the inside. That's peak autobiography material right there. He could really make a killing. I didn't mean that, but that was appropriate. Anyway, okay. So this, there's this scene too where Landry is asking Tim for help, and the thing he says when Tim comes in is, of course, Tim. It's always Tim. And that felt, first of all, like foreshadowing, but also I was like, what exactly does that mean? What is always Tim? What do you mean, dude? And it turns out that Tim he also winds up being responsible later for this whole thing about getting a, what's the word I want? Alibi. Fuck. An alibi for Landry that night. So Landry tells Tim, he had told Keith, I bought a pack of cigarettes. He didn't use a charge card, so there's no timestamp to prove that he was where he says. But he used cash and a woman bummed some smokes off him. So what Tim does, which is honestly pretty smart, Tim bullies this woman into pretending to be the witness to Landry's alibi, and then orchestrates it so that Veronica figures out that that woman works with, or that woman's son is in like the juvie system, and that makes it sound like Landry is the one who called her up and like threatened her into giving a false statement and bearing witness on his behalf. The thing that winds up sort of being like the giveaway, I guess is the word, for Veronica later on, is that she realizes there's really no time that Landry could have made that call and that threat. And this is what, once we find out that she was like not telling the truth, my first thought was like, oh, I bet Tim had access to her, because all she did was talk to Landry on the phone. So I don't know that she knows what that guy's voice even sounds like. Easily Tim could be the one who calls and tells her, I'm Landry and you're going to say XYZ. And sure enough, that's what it is. But because he's like being a little bit too clever for his own good, he manages to get himself got, because Veronica realizes there was no opportunity for Landry to make that call. Now, my question to you all is this. If Tim hadn't done this, and had there be a woman who bore false witness, would Landry have gotten convicted because the whole thing about this is that this gives Landry the opportunity to get out of jail long enough to pursue Mindy and then kill her by accident. What exactly does it accomplish on Tim's part that wouldn't have also been accomplished by him just shutting up? Because this feels to me like he added an extra thing to try and make Lanning look more guilty. That really, what if Lanning had started to figure things out and then he gets sprung from jail because of your shit that you pulled and he comes at you? That could have gone really wrong for him, Tim. So if he had just not done this part, Landry doesn't have an alibi. And he's just sitting there with, nobody speaking for him, and he winds up nailed to the wall anyway. This is just one of those things that I think it's a really smart idea if you needed him to get out of jail so that you could do a further thing to him. Because, there are all kinds of things that maybe you're going to want to, put him... for example, if it looked like Tim was setting Landry up to assault Mindy, then yeah, you make it look like Mindy set him up and then get him sprung from jail. It doesn't feel like that Tim knew that was going to happen, though. I don't feel like he orchestrated that whole thing. So why bother with all of it? It feels like we're just adding too much whipped cream here, stick to the main situation. Arielle says, I think it was just his hubris. He came up with a, quote, brilliant plan, both screwing Landry over more and proving that he is actually really capable. I mean, it's not that feels weak to me. I get what you're trying to say, but it's too much of a risk. What if Landry just fled? He could have, and then you're fucking, because once Landry finds out that she was perhaps setting him up, he gets sprung from jail after being pretty certain that somebody is framing him, most people are going to try and run, right? Because you're just going to figure, okay, obviously somebody is actually out to get me, actively trying to make sure it looks like I committed this murder. I am going to get the fuck out of town. That's what I would do, to be honest. You know, I want to have faith in our system, but I really don't. And if I knew that there was a person out there fabricating shit, I couldn't just relax. I couldn't just go home and trust that it was all going to like shake out and be okay. The eyewitness of one woman from 2 months ago with no like CCTV or anything to prove her, not enough. Let's see. Arielle says, like Veronica said, when you start improvising, you get sloppy. That's my point, though, Arielle. Why was this an improvisation? Why did he do this at all? It wasn't like he improvised this to cover up something else he got wrong. This was purely for the sake of it. There was no reason. He could have just not done anything, and it would have wound up with the results that he wanted, which is it looking like Landry's lying about his alibi and he stays rotting in a cell. So it's like the improvisation would feel like, usually when you use the word improvise, it's due to necessity. You know, you're trying to come up with a solution to a problem that suddenly reared its head that you didn't predict. And I don't really understand, unless, like, I can't tell, maybe I have it wrong. Correct me, guys. I'm assuming that Tim called this woman up and said, I want you to fake being a witness. He did, though, right? Because the only way that this could work is if she was a witness, genuinely did remember seeing Landry. But then Tim got her to confess that somebody like bullied her into pretending that would work. Where, you know, Tim's like, you take it back or I'll make sure that such and such happens to your kid. But I guess if she took it back and it was like a third party that told her to, that would just point to the fact that there was another person involved. Yeah, that doesn't work either. I don't know. Okay. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just, I'm thinking out loud because some of this stuff, it just feels like they wanted to add extra like red herrings and just to kind of confuse the issue. But when you really look at like what you would do if you were Tim in this situation, the choices he makes doesn't make a ton of sense, especially when he's like a criminology student, and you would think that he would know a lot more of this inside and out. This is something that the kind of mistake that I would expect somebody who's a little bit more vain and clueless to do, rather than somebody who actually like gets it and has, maybe that's supposed to be the point, that he's more vain and clueless than he seems. But because of the way that it ends and what Veronica says to him, I really feel like we're supposed to realize that Tim is a lot smarter than anybody thought. And that just they don't really go together. Oh my God, I forgot about this scene. There's this moment where Veronica is eating with Wallace in the cafeteria. And Wallace brings up that he saw Parker, is that her name? And Preston? Parker, and Logan eating together. And it's a funny moment to me because like he's like telling her like, all right, look, I don't want you to get upset, but I saw them eating together. And I'm like, dude, the last episode, you were like leading her away from the two of them because they were sitting at a table flirting and eating together. She knows. She saw it. You were there. And you acted like you were trying to comfort her. Why are you acting like this is news all of a sudden? We just saw you see that with her. What is this? And she says, she just like looks at him and he says, what? And she says, I'm just trying to figure out which Gilmore Girl you are, which I haven't seen that show. but I'm assuming that she's talking about like him trying to be maybe overprotective and gossipy, perhaps. I did think it was funny, even though I don't really get the joke because I haven't watched that show. But there's a subplot that goes on with Parker and Logan. First of all, we have Logan admitting that he skipped a class and her disapproving of this, which I actually really liked. This is one of those things that a lot of people think falsely, that girls are just attracted to bad boys who are bad boys for the sake of it. And maybe that's true for some women, but, you know, I know a lot more women who they would hear a dude just having no motivation of any kind, and that's a major turnoff. And that's what it is with Logan. Especially in terms of his relationship with Veronica. That was always sort of what was missing for me, is he is not a driven person. And she is. She's so driven. And there is just no way that that kind of relationship with somebody who is constantly like somebody who's constantly on, and another person who just doesn't really take much interest in anything, that isn't going to work out. I wish that I had known that when I had married my first husband, because I could have saved myself a lot of grief. But he is also somebody who was not particularly driven. And that was a major factor between the two of us, is him like completely lacking any sort of passion for life, for principles that, well, not for principles, but just like he wasn't active about things that he cared about in a way that proved he cared beyond lip service. And it seems like Parker's sort of seeing Logan in this new light based on the fact that he just decided to not go to class. You know, she had this thing with him in the last episode where they were doing that scavenger hunt, and evidently they both swam out to get that balloon. And that gives you the feeling of somebody who's like adventurous and they have energy and they're going out there like giving it their all. And then you see that he doesn't even want to be bothered turning up for the only class he has all day. And then maybe you start to rethink it, because that's an indication that like he was like maybe just trying to impress you. Maybe it wasn't even about him. It was about you. And that can go either way. If you're a certain type of woman, you take that to be that you motivated him, which turns into the very shaky principle of I can change him, which does not work. But this sort of, it seems to like, I won't say that it directly is the reason that Parker begins to pull back from him, but it feels like it's the first tap on the brakes for her. Later on, she tries to talk to Veronica about the fact that she's been seeing Logan, and wants to be honest with her about it, which I really appreciated, because the two of them, they're not best buds or anything, but they're friendly enough that it just feels like the right thing to do. And I was glad that she was going to be mature and face up to, you know, the difficult conversation. But they get interrupted in the middle of her, you know, trying to ask Veronica for her blessing, essentially. And because she doesn't get it, that's what she says to Logan, is like, I just don't really feel comfortable because Veronica's friendship actually means a lot to me. And I don't want to mess that up. But I can't help but wonder if it's also the fact that you're realizing that this guy is sort of a shiftless playboy. And maybe that's just not super interesting, you know? I think that's what's missing for me in Logan as a character, to be honest. I think that he has felt so aimless that I don't find him interesting, because I don't feel like he has motivation as a character. Like, all he ever wants to do is the easiest option. And that's not really like a likable characteristic. Excuse me. So I don't really know what I'm supposed to like about him, you know? He's not committed to really like helping Veronica with her investigations, or at least he wasn't. He was the one telling her that she shouldn't get involved in stuff. And I just don't even know what it would look like, because he feels so undercharacterized to me that if I were going to say, well, we'll give him something to be passionate about for the rest of the season to sort of flesh out his character more, what would it even be? None of his subjects in school are ever even mentioned as being interesting to him. The only thing that we've seen him participate in is surfing and gambling. I mean, I don't know. So I think that maybe Parker just sort of realized, like, yeah, you're cute and you're rich and that's all very well, but pass. I wonder if she'll get Veronica's blessing and actually like give him another try. But the way that he behaves when she walks away from him, it almost like, I almost feel like he is wistful over the fact that other people value Veronica enough to not mess it up, mess up a friendship. And he's realizing that, like, he didn't value her enough to not do something fucking stupid that completely alienated her. What I'm saying is, he has a wistfulness that, to me, looks like he wants to get Veronica back. And I don't think that was ever really in doubt, but I feel like this means we're circling back around to that. I guess. Let's let Logan commit a murder. Can we do that? We'll shunt him off to the side and out of the picture, but with that. Who will he murder, guys? Come on, let's come together and think about who he's going to murder. Who's somebody good that he can take out that will be like, awesome, good. Glad to see them go. Man, with Sheriff Lamb out of the picture, who's the villain of the show? We need a new villain. Because Lamb is really the only consistent from season to season. He's always been such a shit, you know? Except for that one episode with the girl that was like being abused and kept in a closet, where Lamb actually low-key kind of helped. But other than that, yeah, no. I don't know who that is now. I haven't really talked about like the dynamic with Keith being the cop again, being the sheriff. It's such a weird, guys. Veronica goes in there and she just swans right past the deputy and gets into the case files. When are people going to learn that you can't let Veronica near the file cabinets? Hello? Those file cabinets should be locked, first of all. Come on, everybody. But secondly, she just uses the donuts as a distraction. It's worked before. And yet, here we go again. And she's just able to get into that file cabinet. It's pathetic. Figure it out. Get some professionals in there to up your security. It works in the scene because Keith is aware that she did it and she just tells him right there. But I definitely was like, man, y'all are just letting her like casually lean up against the file cabinet with this like open newspaper. Does that look like a normal thing that a person her age would do right there? Does it? No. What are you guys doing? You're bad at your jobs. However, I do really like the fact that Keith being sheriff now means that they're going to have access to tools that they didn't have before. I really have missed him being able to throw his weight around, and I am looking forward to seeing what that means. But it does also mean that he's going to have his like attention focused on a variety of other things that come with that job. And so we are going to get a lot less of Keith going out and investigating in the field, I feel like. Maybe not. You know, the show might not necessarily be super invested in a true depiction of what life is like as a sheriff. But I feel like it affords him less flexibility. He's also beholden to a different set of rules. You know, like he will be held to a different standard if he gets caught, obviously. If he's able to keep it quiet, then he might be able to get away with more because he's the sheriff. Also, how much is this going to help or hurt Veronica? Because he seems to really kind of try to push her off of this case in which she's trying to prove that Landry didn't do it. But she's, his eyes and ears out on campus, and I want him to capitalize on that a little bit more and take advantage of the fact that she's the nimble one now that can go out and do things that maybe you aren't able to because you're too recognizable in your position. Let's see. I want to make sure that I haven't missed anything else because there's the whole thing with trying to find the strippers who bummed a smoke off of Landry, which leads to, I don't like the actor who plays Tim. I can't decide how I feel about him most of the time because Tim is such a slimy character that I can't tell if it's just I don't like the actor or if the actor is very good because he makes Tim so unlikable. It might be the second one. But I will say, he has one of the best line deliveries of this entire show, in my opinion. When one of the strippers says, "Does it look like we smoke?" And he just says, "Yes." And he does it with this expression and this hand motion. Like, he can't believe that she even asked, but the way that it comes out of his mouth is just a firm yes instead of like, yes. Like, there's no dodoy. And for some reason that makes it funnier. I swear to God, that delivery fucking killed me. I was just like, I just thought that was really good. Oh, right. And then we have the scene where we actually hear the recording because he's the one who finds the like surveillance CD in the house. And there's this weird moment where Veronica is sort of, she's mocking him, really, I guess, was what the word I want, for wearing gloves as they're like breaking, because this is the ex-husband's place, the one who's unstable, that they're trying to prove did it. And she's like making fun of him for wearing gloves as they're like searching through the place, and tells him to just use a sleeve so you don't seem so creepy. And I'm like, you guys are about to go and open like 50 DVD cases and CD cases. Gloves are just a smart option, Veronica. What are you talking about, you weirdo? Wearing gloves doesn't look creepy. What you're doing is creepy. You're up in a stranger's home going through their stuff. I know that you think that that's just par for the course, but most people would agree this is a really creepy fucking thing to do. And he's just being practical, and you could honestly stand to be a little bit more practical yourself. So let's see. What is the next? I just want to make sure there's nothing else that I missed, because that scene I just found really funny. Oh my God, right. She also does the thing where they're trying to get information on an address, and she does the whole like call in from a radio show and tell them that you won an iPod or something, and that's how they wind up getting the address of that kid that they're trying to trace, who winds up being the son of the stripper who provided the alibi. I can't remember. He's like in a photo in the background, right? Is that the thing? Well, that's how they figure out the Papa's cabin thing. Disposable cell phone that he found in the trash, allegedly. That's right. And she does that's when she does the redial. That's what it is. Thank you. So he sets up the phone thing. I completely forgot about how it is that she figures that part out. But yeah, I enjoyed him like saying, "Oh, are you going to do this like really direct investigative thing?" And her being like, "Oh, if by direct investigative thing you mean just fucking con somebody, then absolutely." So yeah, then we get the whole catching up with Landry, And his devastation when he has to confess to Keith that, like, so that woman is dead. I killed her by accident, but nevertheless, it's an honestly really upsetting scene because when they come onto the yacht, we don't know that Mindy's dead. So we're expecting the two of them. And instead, it's just Landry, like, cowering in the bunk area. And his, like, whole self his hair is standing on end. He's freaking out, you know? This caught me totally by surprise. I really didn't expect her to be gone. That was a fucking twist. This one hurt me. I felt really bad for him too. I did all that for her. I tried to cover for her and she set me up. I just switched Batondo's keyboard with the Dean's. It might have worked, but then you took over as sheriff. And basically he's like, you're just too good at your job and you ruined everything. So, the end of the episode is Veronica figuring out that it was actually Tim who did it and confronting him in front of the whole class. I really love the vibe, too, when he's talking to the class, and you can sense that that he's, like, effervescent with pride and relief over the fact that that guy's in jail and he killed Mindy and he confessed to it, so there's nothing to worry about. You know, there's a whole vibe to him as he takes over this lecture of, like, just this confidence we haven't seen from him this entire time. And it makes a lot of sense because he really thinks that he got away with that shit. And, like, it was a slam dunk, you know? So it ends with Keith coming home and telling her that he got a confession. And excuse me, God, I had the cough. I have the sneeze. I don't know what's going on. But he mentioned something about the special election. So I guess Keith is only, like, temporarily the sheriff until they get everybody to vote on it. So are we going to get another, like, campaign where he has to... I really hope that whatever winds up being the last installment of, like, mysteries this season isn't Keith being accused of something, because I don't want him to be mixed up in anything. There goes something that would actually really, I don't know, get me emotionally invested. Okay. I think that's everything. Acting sheriff. Yeah, thank you, Arielle. So I'm going to wrap up, but thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate you all being here in the chat and helping me out with names and stuff again. And I hope that you have been enjoying the coverage. Let's see when the next one is, on March 19th. So a week from today, season 3, episode 16, Un-American Graffiti. All right, guys, until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.